Recording in progress.
Okay, good afternoon everyone and welcome to the Cleaner Catalyst session. Person joining us and hosting us today. We're going to start in 1 minute, just give you a chance to find your seats. For those who aren't connected yet on the headphones, we're on channel 4, and you'll need that to join the session today. Okay, good evening. Can you hear me? You can, yes. Okay. My name is Michael Doust. I'm the Director for Urban Efficiency and Climate at the WI Ross Centre for Sustainable Cities. And we're here today to discuss the importance of integrated climate, clean air and equity goals and a multi-level, multi-sectoral collaboration in driving ambitious action on the ground. The Clean Air Catalyst is a global partnership launched by the US Agency for International Development, USAID, WRI and EDF in 2020 to scale up subnational climate and clean air action in low and middle income countries. The Catalyst aims to transform cities by bringing the full range of stakeholders to the table, building a shared understanding of the root causes of air pollution and establishing coalitions to develop and drive solutions. In doing so, the Catalyst seeks to mainstream climate and clean air action into the delivery of city services, infrastructure and procurement. We're now halfway through this 5-year project, taking stock here at COP27, and some of us meeting for the very first time, and very glad to be sharing our progress and our insights and lessons learned with you all. We've got a great lineup for you today, and next I'd like to introduce our panel, starting with His Excellency Sakaja Arthur Johnson, the newly elected Governor of Nairobi City County. Thank you for joining us today, Governor Sakaja. Next, and joining us online, is Mayor Mitra Bhargav from Indore, India. We're also joined by John Kioli next to me, the Chairman of the Kenya Climate Change Working Group and Executive Director of the Green Africa Foundation. Thank you for joining us. Next, we've got Dr. Jakarta Samadi, WRI's Country Director for Indonesia and representing our third city partner, Jakarta. And via Zoom, we also have Sarah Vogel, Senior Vice President for Healthy Communities at the Environmental Defence Fund, which is a co-lead of the Clean Air Catalyst. But before we start the panel discussion, I'd like to introduce Genevieve Miracle as Senior Advisor Climate and Environment at USAID, who's going to give us some opening remarks. Genevieve?
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me here today and for having this session. I think
with all of the buzz that's around us in this space, I find often that in climate conversations, and often even in SDG conversations, that air pollution is just too often missing. So it is very good to have this session, to have this conversation, and to be able to focus on such an important program. So I do want to start, and I'm seeing it here, with just the statistics, with why this is so important. WHO estimates that air pollution causes 7 million deaths each year, that it's the 4th greatest risk factor for early death globally, and contributes to 12% of all deaths in the world. These numbers are unequivocal. This is something we all need to be talking about through all of the spaces here. Air pollution and climate change also very unequivocally connected and affecting of our daily lives. More than 90% of the world's population lives in areas with unhealthy air above the WHO guidelines, and 2.6 billion people who cook with polluting fuels like wood, coal, and dung inhale toxic smoke while trying to simply cook a meal or stay warm. The impacts also are not equal, and they are very intricately connected to gender roles. Equality and access to energy and healthcare, women are much more likely than men to walk rather than take private transport, increasing their exposure to street-level pollutants. The good news is that many actions that we take to address climate change also have a direct impact on air pollution. We need to promote interventions, policies, and programs that tackle air pollution and climate change simultaneously, and that's why we're talking about this program. USAID's flagship air pollution program, the Clean Air Catalyst program, launched in 2020, uses an innovative approach to address several of the common roadblocks that prevent action on air pollution and climate. So if you'll look at the slide, initially, the way that the innovative approach is, one, to raise awareness of local leaders, stakeholders, and the community about the main sources of local air pollution so that there can be a shared understanding of the problem and of the impacts, and then be able to identify those leading sources to be able to target. The second step to identify the most effective actions is basically that the Catalyst team digs deeper to identify the root causes and then identify those actions that will most effectively address those root causes. And then basically through a collaborative stakeholder and policymaker workshop and consultation process, define those solutions more through co-creation. Then the third step, a strategic coalition, is formed to advance solutions that deliver the kinds of benefits, health, climate, and development that can come about by prioritizing pollutants and pollution sources that disproportionately affect vulnerable populations and women. So, this program, it's important to say, you can go to the next slide, really helps advance USAID's new climate strategy. And in really each of the different major goal areas within the strategy. The strategy was released in April. It goes through 2030. And it really did use a whole of agency approach to identify those sort of most critical areas to work, as well as the sort of most powerful solutions. Kind of looking at the effects, sort of how air pollution and the Clean Air Catalyst program addresses each of the 6. I'll just go through them right now. So you can go to the next slide. So the first target is mitigation, to cut 6 billion metric tons of CO2 equivalent, which is effectively equal to the equivalent of all U.S. greenhouse gas emissions in 2020. So kind of knowing that many air pollutants are also powerful short-lived climate pollutants, like black carbon, HFCs, and methane, by focusing on air pollution through this kind of work, we're able to try and keep the temperature increase to below 1.5 degrees, and that's really what this target is about. You can go to the next slide. So the next 2 targets, the first one is to reduce by 500 million people are supported to become more climate resilient, and then also 100 million hectares are protected. And I just should say that sort of for adaptation, climate impacts that we're seeing now can increase localized air pollution through things like diesel generators. If we switch to electricity backup when severe weather hits, it's just, this is deeply related to sort of how we think about increasing resilience for these populations. If we're able to make these switches to these to things like electricity backups, Similarly, by supporting nature ecosystem conservation and management through decreasing charcoal-led deforestation and greenhouse gas emissions from promoting cleaner household energy use, we can both affect air pollution and get closer to our ultimate target. You can move to the next slide. The fourth target in the strategy is to increase the participation of marginalized and underrepresented groups in at least 40 countries. Air pollution exposure is often greatest for the urban poor, who cannot readily reduce their exposure to air pollution and often have the highest exposure to other climate risks like urban heat islands, flooding, and land subsidence. Understanding who is most exposed to unhealthy air is a critically important lens to identify the most vulnerable communities to work on within our climate strategy as well. Next slide. The fifth target in our strategy is finance. USAID will mobilize $150 billion in public and private finance for climate. Both air quality and climate action depend on the ability of local governments and organizations to mobilize domestic resources and external finance. Cities often have more control over the sources of air pollution because the sources are local. But there is a tremendous gap in what cities need to make good on national climate commitments and what they receive or have access to. USAID must help close this gap. Then the next slide. The last target, the sixth target, is country support. USAID will align our development portfolios with countries' climate change mitigation and adaptation commitments in at least 80 countries by 2024, and will support our partners to achieve systemic changes toward meeting those commitments in at least 40 countries. USAID can help countries raise ambition on short-lived climate pollutants, such as black carbon reduction in NDCs, and back that up with action to support their implementation. So just before we move on to the panel and the video, I do want to take a moment to just point out sort of some specific ways that USAID can catalyze climate and air quality action. So one is by bridging the disconnect between national climate plans and local action. Since air quality management and climate action planning traditionally occur separately, USAID can help convene the relevant stakeholders to develop integrated plans that include emission reduction targets for both PM 2.5 and CO2 equivalents to ensure both near-term health benefits and long-term climate benefits. USAID can also build the technical understanding and political will of government officials around various actions that can be taken that both reduce emissions and deliver economic growth. So for example, in the transport sector, diesel is by far the biggest contributor to black carbon and air pollution. If cities switch from diesel to e-buses, the operational costs of these buses can actually be substantially lower. So in Chile, each e-bus had a savings of approximately $40,000 per year over gas counterparts. Some actions that impact climate have enormous co-benefits for health and air pollution. This is particularly true for household energy. So for example, a full transition to clean household fuels such as LPG and electricity will dramatically reduce black carbon emissions and PM 2.5 by 99%. Impacts of AQM practices are often more localized than impacts of global climate change mitigation. We can help cities harness public demand for clean air. In cities that have taken targeted action to reduce air pollution emissions, we see significant drops in respiratory diseases and ER visits. This results in direct and significant savings for the health system. As we all know, this decade is going to be decisive for the future of our planet. Given the sheer magnitude of this issue and direct links to climate and environmental justice, which are obviously very high priority issues for the Biden administration, we think this is an opportune moment to expand air quality programming. USAID is committed to galvanizing the lasting changes necessary to combat the twin crises of air pollution and climate change. And I think with that, I want to turn your attention to the screen, where we will play a short video providing an overview of the Clean Air Catalyst program.
Air pollution is choking people and cities around the world at alarming rates. Globally, 99% of people breathe unhealthy air. Air pollution is undermining the well-being of billions of people, especially vulnerable communities who bear the heaviest burden. It is the largest environmental health risk in the world, responsible for nearly 7 million premature deaths a year, more than HIV/AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis combined. From cars to power plants, many of the same air pollutants that damage our lungs also damage our climate. Rapidly urbanizing regions in developing countries are on the front lines of this global health and climate crisis. Urgent action is needed to accelerate solutions. In 2020, the U.S. Agency for International Development launched an initiative to improve air quality in cities around the world. Clean Air Catalyst is a global partnership led by World Resources Institute and Environmental Defense Fund in collaboration with air quality science, policy, health, and communication experts. Work is starting with local governments, communities, and the private sector in 3 cities: Indore, India, Jakarta, Indonesia, and Nairobi, Kenya. Reducing air pollution improves public health, helps end poverty and inequality, and lessens climate change impacts. From advancing clean energy access, to developing alternatives to burning crops, to supporting the transition to zero-emission transportation, Clean Air Catalyst is focused on delivering results on the ground and in the air, because it's time to protect our one shared atmosphere.
Great, thank you very much, Genevieve. Right, we're going to start the panel discussion, and Sarah, you can see, has just joined us on screen. I'm going to start with you, Sarah. Can you kick us off by telling us a bit more about the Clean Air Catalyst's unique approach and what makes it so unique?
Great. Thank you, Michael. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. I just want to say, on behalf of all the partners from the Clean Air Catalyst program, I want to extend my gratitude to all our honorable guests who are joining us on this panel today. It's really a tremendous pleasure to have you with us, and I just want to thank you so much for taking the time. So I do want to just offer some very brief comments on this unique approach of the Catalyst program that you've heard a little bit about. So our goal is to unlock lasting, durable solutions to clean air and climate. So when we developed this program, we began with this simple but really overlooked reality that I think many people in this room are aware of, that you can have good policies, good laws, and good science on air and climate pollution, but they can often be insufficient to achieving real results on the ground if we don't have enough political will and public support. So to address that really important need, the Catalyst approach has been grounded in a deep collaborative approach that's designed to build trust and a shared understanding of both the problem and the solution to air pollution among diverse stakeholders across civil society. So you heard a little bit about the approach. So how do we do that? We begin, really, the first step is to focus on this cultivation of a shared understanding of those sources of pollution, not just the problem of pollution, but those sources of pollution, what we call source awareness. And we do that through extensive stakeholder engagement, public messaging, and scientific evaluation. Then secondly, we work to build support for an intervention to a polluting activity by working to understand the full landscape of why that activity exists and seeking those solutions that may go beyond regulations, that could be integrated into the delivery of city services, infrastructure, procurement plans. And then third, we're bringing together stakeholders so that they can work together to then advance these interventions to cutting polluting emissions. And then across all these activities, every step along the way, we're considering how specific polluting activities and those proposed solutions can impact climate, health, and disproportionately impacted communities, including women and children. And we aim to then advance those interventions that deliver multiple benefits. And when we do that, we're seeking to broaden support across diverse sectors of society and really finding ways to elevate women's voices and leadership throughout the program. Finally, and I think it's important to note that the Catalyst program is also expanding the technical and analytical capacity for local officials to take action on clean air and climate long after the project is complete. Because for us, success is going to be that the Catalyst program has been just that, this catalytic force that puts in motion long-term actions that are going to reduce health and climate harming pollution. So thank you again for joining us today, and back over to you, Michael.
Next, moving back to the panel here in the room, and Governor Sakaja, how do you envision keeping up the momentum for clean air in the city of Nairobi, and how can the Clean Air Catalyst support you with your top priorities?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation by USAID. And I'm glad to note that the partnership with Nairobi County Government on clean air was launched like 2-3 months before I got elected. So I want to thank you guys for waiting for me to be elected. I must keep up the momentum, and of course the first thing is to build awareness of air quality issues. To many of my citizens, it is almost very high sounding discussion, and there's not enough awareness in the local communities on really the danger. Even I have just learned 7 million deaths a year. That is a disaster, and we need to build that awareness. We need to have homegrown interventions that the people own, so that it doesn't look like a foreign top-down activity that is removed from the people. And so we must work with various stakeholders from the local communities and the different levels, so that we can own the conversation and have local solutions. And of course, co-creation is really important. In Nairobi, we have an amazing group of innovators. Our young people are very innovative, and once given the challenge, they would give us a lot of solutions. I think there's a homegrown air monitoring intervention or invention made by our young people. When we endorse that as a government, then it builds trust in that. Of course, focus groups and surveys using the media, and also showing the benefit of having clean air. Yeah, because you must use both approaches. While we'll have the monitors to see which industries are polluting, for us the 4.7 metric CO2 equivalent emissions are mostly from the transport sector, which is 45%, but also our industries are involved. So once we build the awareness and we measure, and then we have interventions such that if you are polluting this amount, it means therefore, one, apart from just reducing it, you need to plant this number of trees. Because I'm starting a very ambitious tree planting program together with the private sector and manufacturers. So just keeping up that speed, and of course a strong engagement with civil society, with our CBOs, with our young people. I'm happy to see Kioli here for us to work together on it. That's how we'll keep up this momentum.
Thank you very much. And then moving from the governor to our mayor on the panel, and focusing on Indore. Indore was recently named the cleanest city in India for the 6th year in a row in the national government's cleanliness survey, largely through the work on solid waste and water. And Mayor, as your focus shifts to air pollution, how can the Clean Air Catalyst approach support your goals to improve air quality in the city of Indore? We can't hear you, Mayor. Maybe muted.
Yeah, speak.
We're going to come back to the mayor in a second. In the meantime, we'll move on to Dr. Kony, our colleague from Indonesia. The Catalyst seeks to build understanding and political will among government officials around various actions that can be taken to reduce emissions that cause poor air quality and affect the climate. Can you talk a bit more about how this is playing out in Jakarta, but also how efforts to integrate climate and clean air action can support Indonesia's NDC and national climate goals?
Thank you, Michael. A very good question. And also the USAID presentation, which is putting a good frame on what we are doing here. Yeah. So let me start with a bit of political stories. Yeah. In September last year, the President of Indonesia, the Minister of Environment and Forestry, and the Governor of Jakarta, all found guilty of negligence because they are unable to secure or to make sure that the Jakarta people able to get clean air. Yeah? So, and very interesting reaction coming from the governor of Jakarta, and this is the city that CAC is piloting. He said publicly, yeah, I will not challenge the court decision because I knew that we are not doing enough. We are doing so very little in ensuring that the Jakarta people are getting a clean air. Yeah? So in that sense, he understood. Right? He understood that air pollution is something that is need to be tackled, but they're not doing it in an effective manner, if you like. Yeah. So from then on, he moved to come up with the governor decree, yeah, which consists of 75 action plans, ranging from identifying source of pollution, which is exactly what the CAC projects aim to achieve. Yeah. And then also electrify buses, which is now starting to go. Yeah. And a lot of things that needs to be doing not just by the government, but also by all stakeholders. Yeah. But unfortunately, this last month in October, his term is come to the end, yeah, expired, and therefore there's a transfer of power to the acting governor, which means that this very strategic governor's decree hasn't been signed. Yeah? So we are now doing a lot of things to facilitate the legalization of that decree. Yeah? So one of things that we are doing actually is part of that action plans, which is try to identify what is the polluters, yeah, in Jakarta, and we found out that 44 of emission coming from Jakarta is from transportation. So it's just like Nairobi, right? 44%. Whereas the numbers of heavy duty vehicles, which is the main source of emissions, only 4%. Yeah. And within the emission that is produced by these heavy duty vehicles, 25% of it is black carbon, yeah, which is having around 450 times more, producing more heat than others, part of the PM 2.5. Yeah. In a sense, in Jakarta, it creates or it changed the microclimate on the dense populated areas of Jakarta. Yeah. So that is one of the findings that we then try to find solution to that. Yeah. So one of the thinking, which is also part of that governor decree, is to electrifying buses. Yeah. So we wanted to do more than that, doing it for the heavy duty vehicle to also going to be electrified. If that happens, then it automatically is going to lower down the emission from the cities, and that is part of the our NDC targets, yeah, to lower down emission from transportation. although it's not very specifically focused on cities. But what we are doing actually going to support the NDC. I'll stop there, Michael. Thank you.
That's great, and a really good example of how data is really being used to better understand the impact of air pollution and help you identify more effective solutions, but also how you can better align the city action to national action. We're going to try Indore again. Mayor, I'm going to come back to you with the same question and ask you for your thoughts on how the Cleaner Catalyst approach can support you in your city in improving air quality. I'm afraid the internet connection is still not reliable, so we'll try and connect later on again. But in the meantime, I want to go back to the panel, and Governor Sakaja, I want to come back to you. How do you envision keeping up? I'm going to go to my colleague John Keoli next to me, and we're going back to Nairobi. You participated in a 4-day forum, the Catalyst organised in July just after its launch, with around 70 stakeholders. We all count the first occasion many people have come together around cleaner action. The forum led to the formation of the Nairobi Air Quality Working Group, which began to organise collaborations on air quality in the city. Mr. Golu, what's your expectations for this working group? And can you speak more generally to the role of civil society and the challenges they encounter in addressing air quality and climate change in Nairobi and maybe Kenya more broadly?
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be with my governor, His Excellency Sakaja, who is doing a great job in Nairobi, and especially on issues of pollution and issues of waste management. I think he's turning around the whole issue to put a human face in it, which is very important. Going back to our participation as civil society, more than 50% of population in the world lives in urban areas. More than that, the amount of people are living under pressure of water, under pressure of energy, under pressure of health conditions because of pollutions. We know that in Kenya, if we don't do anything by 2050, 15% of our GDP will go because of issues of climate change. So what we are thinking as civil society is, one, we amplify the available policies and the legislative instruments that are there. The County of Nairobi has already enacted air pollution policy, which is very commendable. They are working on their Climate Change Act and Climate Change Policy, together with other instruments that we think are very instrumental. So we want as civil society to advocate, to amplify what they are doing in terms of policy. The second thing is to raise the ambition into implementation. There is quite a lot that is happening now in terms of capture of methane and production of biogas. I think as civil society we are already doing a lot in the county that needs to be amplified. So we want now to partner with the County of Nairobi to amplify these little things that are being done and to encourage the county now not only to start new projects but to amplify whatever is there. The other thing that we're thinking is that we also are taking the space of now looking at how this links to the national projects and the national issues like the NDCs of our country. A big chunk of it talks about methane capture. A big chunk of it talks about what His Excellency has talked about, tree planting. A lot is talking about energy and energy efficiency, which now we are saying, can we bring this language to the industries? Can we bring the language of energy efficiency to the people of Nairobi? 84% of the charcoal that is produced in the rural area comes to the urban areas. So can we have essentially efficient cooking devices which can take less charcoal and smoke less? Can we have that information to the people so that we don't have more problems in terms of that? In terms of challenges, I think this is not a Nairobi issue, but civil society come last in every implementation of every project. So we look for space. We literally look for space in terms of where we fit. So we are happy because the likes of Honorable His Excellency Sakaja, who understands us, who has space for us. So we want to come to the table and considered as equal partners in terms of implementation. The other thing is also issues of resources. I think there is no much mechanism, and this is common in any other country, of integrating civil society in resources that are available in government and in county governments, so that they can also participate in national building and also participate in implementation of climate change projects. So finally, I think we have offered the space. We have been available to partner, and work has already started in Nairobi in terms of air quality and advocacy around that. Thank you.
That's really great to hear and really exciting. And also, thank you for emphasizing the importance of listening to local voices. I'm going to kind of flip the question and go to you, Governor Sakaja. A key part of the Cleaner Catalyst is around engaging civil society to co-design solutions to air pollution. Governor, what kind of partnerships and support are you looking for from civil society to support your agenda and help clean the air in Nairobi?
Thank you. The first thing, and thanks, Kyoli, for your very kind words. I understand the role that civil society plays, the advocacy role, cannot be replaced by any other, sector of society. And so I would need support from civil society in focusing the agenda and amplifying the actions that the government is taking, that my government is taking. For instance, over the last few weeks, there's been a lot of focus on the environment, on solid waste management, on making sure that there's no illegal dumping, and so once we work together on focusing attention, public attention, in a way that no one else can do with the civil society, then we can be able to marshal resources around it. Secondly, there are many interventions. Of course, we will work together in the working group. I'll make sure there are resources from the government, but there are many initiatives that we intend to, come up with or implement, because I think we all know what needs to be done, from the air quality monitoring to mode switching to turning a lot of our public service vehicles into more efficient energy sources, electricity, our motorbikes that are used to transport people. We want to convert, and there's actually a process of converting them into electricity, but just building the attention around that. We know many times in our country, people who may not be happy with it because of business interests would go to court. When there's a public support coming from civil society, then that makes it easier for us to be able to actually implement these things that we agree on. We're transitioning into a circular economy model of dealing with solid waste management, which also will contribute to reduction of greenhouse emissions. Civil society has a great connection with community-based organizations at the grassroots, and those are the organizations that we want to work with. Kyoli has given the example of methane gas coming from the waste at our lowest levels, together with the CBOs which are under civil society. I think we'll be able to make that progress. So there's a lot that we can do together. There's a lot I want to say, to do with them. But the biggest sign of my, of how focused I am and how I genuinely mean I want to work with them, is that when I unveiled my government 1 week ago, I created a docket that doesn't exist in any other county government of inclusivity and public participation, as a ministry on its own. I don't think you've seen that before. And that is because of the place that civil society plays, the role that other groups that are normally ignored. So women, and we've seen, the impact that this has on women, who are the ones who are cooking using, these methods that are not good for them. Young people, persons living with disability, mostly bear the brunt. We want them front and center and to focus on them. And of course, we're going to put the budgets that are required. I saw my friend doing this. We're going to put the budgets. We're going to follow the financing to those functions. So civil society, I want to assure, and I can see many of them here from Kenya, that they are part of this administration, and I need them as partners. not just as people who I'm giving a task to do, but as partners for us to keep co-creating and designing. It's not an event. There's no date that we will create and I take it as a product and go, but I want continuous engagement with them and for them to understand the programs that we're doing and where we are going wrong, for them to advise. Yeah, that is what I would want to do with the civil society going forward.
Slick, and great to hear the partnership approach that you're taking and you're seeing for civil society. Picking up on your reference to inclusivity and particularly women, Genevieve, I'll move on to you. One of the Clean Air Catalyst's key deliverables is empowering women to be clean air catalysts themselves. Why have you included this as a particular focus in this program?
Yeah, thank you so much. And the partnership model is really the right one. So this is, I think, a fantastic bridge into this. So if air pollution and climate change are not gender neutral, the solutions to them can't be either. So the Clean Air Catalyst program has really paid attention to increasing our understanding of these gender differences in how air pollution exposure takes place, and basically to empower women as catalysts of solutions. So there's a few pieces to this. In the first years of the program, there's a big focus on getting sex disaggregated data, because there was a recognition early on in the program that was not a part. We do not have sex disaggregated data, not just for air pollution, but also for transport, for employment, for income, for a huge number of things that quite relate to this. So being able to develop that sex disaggregated data is a key part of the program. Then second in really including women voices in conversation with journalists, with policymakers, with others, in trying to figure out some of these solutions and get them into the mix at both city level and national level. And then the last thing I would just say here is also the emphasis that the program has put on working with women scientists as well, and including, again, in that development of solutions, having women in these key roles empowered. So,
thank you very much. We're going to go back to the online panelists, and I want to go back to Indore and try our connection again. And again, starting with the same question, Mayor, how is the Clean Air Catalyst supporting your goals on clean air in Indore?
Go ahead, Mayor. It's your turn.
Good afternoon. It's matter of great pleasure that we are part of the Clean Air Catalyst program. Namaskar to all of you. Indore has been tremendous success in building robust programs to tackle environmental issues of solid waste management and water pollution. Indore has been declared the first Water Plus city in India, which is designation awarded to cities for maintaining clean waterways and drains. Because of Indore's progress on waste segregation at source, our biocompressed natural gas plant is positioned for success. Clean organic material is converted into biogas. Half of this gas powers the Indore Municipal Corporation's integrated bus transit system, and half is sold locally for privately owned vehicles. The bio-CNG plant is a joint project between Indore government and a private corporation. Our hope is that the successful public-private partnership can give confidence to other cities and private stakeholders to implement similar solid waste management strategies. It is through this partnership, as well as deep grassroots engagement with civil society, that we will solve environmental problems. This is at the core of the Clean Air Catalyst approach. Indore has solved its waste problem. Now we want to solve the problem of air pollution. We have the capacity to tackle air pollution. We are uniquely positioned to become the model for other cities, and that might be the reason we are part of this Clean Air Catalyst program. The state of Madhya Pradesh and across the country, we can become the model. The science-based source awareness work of the Clean Air Catalyst is similar to Indore's extensive grassroots advocacy model for waste segregation at source. as a part of our vision includes significant investments in sustainable mobility, and transport is one of the sectors the Clean Air Catalyst will focus on. Specifically, we are looking at improving traffic flow so that the public transit system can be more efficient. We are adding 80 new traffic buses into integrated transit system, and we are partnering with the Clean Air Catalyst on air quality monitoring to give us more information about exactly what's in our air. Traffic congestion is a major issue in Indore. By focusing on co-designing solution to this and other problems with stakeholders, we can arrive at durable, lasting solutions that provide climate and health benefits, especially about the vulnerable populations. The Clean Air Catalyst provides Indore with additional capacity to understand the problem and source of air pollution and to bring in a diverse set of stakeholders to work together to co-design solution to deliver cleaner air. Apart from these traffic issues, more specifically and especially from the industry's part also, as we have already sorted out our problem from the waste or the solid waste, now we are left with the two issues, one from the industry and second from the traffic. And we are very helpful that this Clean Air Catalyst program will certainly lead us to the solution, which will be an example all over the India and to the neighboring countries also.
Very much, Mayor, and Indore is very much an example city in India, and I like your ambition to be an example around the world, and that's indeed what we're trying to do with the Clean Air Catalyst, is to catalyse clean air not just in the three cities we're currently active in, but to catalyse an approach to air quality management in cities around the world. With a particular focus on equity, and I want to pick up on that with Dr. Koni. What's the importance of working with health and gender communities in Jakarta to build support and generate solutions beyond the typical approach around regulation to clean air?
Yeah. Okay. Let me present some numbers, as a start. 9 out of 10 people in Jakarta exposed to bad air quality, which affect the economic productivity. The World Bank has some studies on that, and come up with the numbers, which is the economic loss due to the low productivities reaching at 6.6% of the GDP in 2019, and at the same time also reduces the average life by 2.5 years. So it is significant both on economic side of things and also on health. So at least 5,000 deaths in Jakarta were attributed to PM 2.5 exposure in the same year, 2019. Around 260,000 patients admitted because of asthma. And then around 85,000 hospital visits were connected to air pollution exposure. So within our project, we do what we call as a source narrowing process. This is the approaches that we are doing on gender equity and also inclusion approaches. We found that the most vulnerable communities consist of women, and usually pregnant women, because there's also a study that telling us that pollution causes stunting. Therefore, we also found that in Jakarta, a pregnant woman is one of the communities that is being affected by this. Elderly and also ride-hailing driver. This is a very big problem in Indonesia, because of the lack of transportation, public transportation in Jakarta and also other cities in Indonesia. They resort the solution to two-wheelers taxi, and the driver is very much exposed to this kind of air pollution. We also, through this project, spoke with the disabled communities and urban poor, yeah, to explore more inclusive solution, yeah, to ensure that the solutions do not bring more harms to women and vulnerable communities. Yeah. So to advance our works with CAC, yeah, we are now engaging with I think the largest faith-based grassroots organization in the world, which is I cannot name the name, right? Also, I will not name the name. It has 90 million people as members. So that's basically 1/3 of Indonesia population. It's quite huge. Yeah. So we are engaging them in regard to this project, so that we know better, not just in Jakarta but also in Indonesia, because I think as a pilot, it has to have a learning component, yeah, for the national level. I'll stop there, Michael. Thank you.
Very much. Yeah, I like the numbers, and again, your focus on health and on people, which here really is what this is all about. Moving to Sarah, and health is obviously a clear focus of any air quality program. But within the catalyst, how important has it been for us to engage the health sector?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Yes, health has been core to this program. I'll just say, we know that health and medical workers in these cities are likely seeing firsthand the impacts of high pollution exposure, because we know, right? We know that air pollution is a cause, that's really important here, a cause of lung cancer, low birth weight, asthma, stroke, heart disease, diabetes. But some of these healthcare workers may not know about that connection to pollution. So bringing those workers together, sharing the best kind of leading scientific knowledge at the local scale, training the medical community has been a really important part of creating a body of messengers within the healthcare community. Our partner Vital Strategies has been doing some of that work on the ground in Indore and Jakarta. For example, in Indore, just this week, there'll be trainings of ASHA workers, which are local workers that go out into the community and are really providing that direct community care. And what's also important and relevant to that is that these public health workers are often very trusted messengers, right? They can deliver information to the public about how pollution can affect their lives and the lives of their loved ones. So educating them, helping them become spokespeople so that they can better help their patients, right? To better protect themselves and help them make those connections to why clean energy or clean transportation or other investments and interventions that are being taken by the local officials here with us today, why that can benefit them directly. So it's been, there's many reasons to engage this sector, and it's been really exciting to watch that happen.
Sarah, so we've heard a lot about how the Cleaner Catalyst helps to connect different sectors, different organizations, and cross some of those boundaries. Genevieve, turning to you, and maybe asking you, how can the Catalyst in USA, maybe more generally, help bridge the disconnect between city and national level action?
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great question, and I think there are sort of four primary ways. I think the first is, basically by taking the clean air interventions in pilot cities and, building them into existing national and subnational climate policies and investments. Identifying those sort of powerful solutions enables you to make that stronger case for being able to build it into those policies and investments. I think the second thing is just access to funding. By getting good science-backed solutions identified, by knowing the root causes of air pollution, you can really, build those solutions into policy frameworks and identify actions that are more likely to get sort of access to funding streams through public funding in general, and also through the sort of broader climate finance system that we're talking a lot about in different spaces here. I think another way is sort of by growing technical and political capacity, working with key stakeholders to highlight and strengthen the connection between climate and air quality, and just better sort of get this into integrated planning and policy. And then the last thing is really through all of these efforts, and generally by building sort of a diverse group of stakeholders that really understands these issues, you're really just raising the profile of the issue more broadly, which is, I think, something that the panel spoke to earlier really powerfully. Generally, you're able to sort of get that national level of attention to the sort of power of the interventions here.
Thank you very much. Lots of suggestions there to bridge that gap between local and national action. I'm afraid that's it for today. We're out of time. I'd like to thank the panel, both in person and online, for a very rich discussion and highlighting the need for and benefits of an integrated, multi-level, multi-sectoral approach to accelerating both climate and clean air action. I'd also like to thank you, the audience, both again here in person and the, I think, over 100 we had joining us online. And finally, thank you to USAID for funding this fantastic project and allowing us to really scope out a robust approach to integrated climate action. Thank you very much.